This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Thursday, 13 August, year of our Lord, 2026. We're going to go to the White House in a moment. Dr. Peter Navarro, we got Jim Rickards on, and we're continuing with Dr. Jeffrey Tucker. So those are three of the smartest guys I know on a Thursday in August. Dr. Tucker, about a month ago, you took analysis from, I think, the guy that founded Grabian. I think he's living in Spain. He had some time to go through all this analytics, and you were helpful enough to kind of put out some stories, some write-ups, that's saying, hey, look, we talk about the purchasing price of the dollar dropping 20 to 22% during Biden's, the illegitimate Joe Biden's reign of terror in capital markets and on the economy. But you're saying, hey, I got bad news for you. It's 50% or more. This gets back to my people's heads are blowing off the last couple of days of these, like the Lakers go for $12 billion. They just sold for 10 like a year and a half ago. And before that, people thought they were like $2 billion. They got the Queen Music Publishing Library sells for $1 billion. I think Springsteen sells for multi-billions. That's a reflection not simply on the value of these, but it's the scarcity tied to the drop in the purchasing power of the fiat currency of the U.S. dollar. Sir, make it make sense to us.
Well, inflation of this scale hardly ever makes sense, and that's one of the major problems with it. It feels sometimes like prosperity. Even during the Weimar Republic, people were thrilled. They were becoming millionaires. The jobs were everywhere, and there's much to do, and they felt like profits were going great, and the stock market was soaring. People don't know this, but even in the early years of the Weimar inflation, before the currency was destroyed, the stock market, the German stock market, was going through the roof. And yeah, it's not as bad as that, obviously, here, but we're seeing how this works. On one hand, we've got Elon Musk is a trillionaire. It seems like all these companies are making billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, and it seems like, wow, things are looking good. Well, how do we know this isn't just the loss of purchasing power? This is just monetary depreciation playing itself out in real time. And you know this because when you go to the store, you're every day shocked. I was trying to buy a snack the other day at the convenience store, and it seemed like everything was $4. And I thought, what in the world? Who can afford things like this? I'm paying $16 for a tiny bucket of cheese. I mean, nothing really makes any sense. So we need, and it's even worse that we don't have accurate measures. The reality index that I like to quote believes that CPI is systematically under reporting inflation by about a third. So when you hear, as we did a couple of days ago, the CPI is running 3.4%, that's bad, but it's probably closer to 4%. At least it was the month before. So it's actually worse than even the BLS is reporting. And the reason for that, it's not that the bureaucrats are lying to us, really. It's that they use weird methodologies that are designed to underreport inflation with hedonic adjustments. They don't really report house prices. They report homeowners equivalent rent. They don't even bother with what you're paying for health insurance. That's why it doesn't show up in the numbers, even though health insurance is, I don't want to call it health insurance. We should call it medical insurance, has gone through the roof with absurd levels of deductibles. Everything has become unaffordable, and you're a chump unless you're levered up to the highest extent that you possibly can, which is why your cell phone is blowing up every day telling you your new FICO score, because surely you want to borrow money, right? Don't you want to borrow more money? Why would you not borrow to the maximum extent you can? This is not sound economics. This is the road to complete ruin of a nation, and it has to stop.
Well, the Roaring Twenties, but people forget the Weimar Republic at one time. People were like living large. This is one of the reasons that such decadence in the society you had. Then you had our stock market collapsed. You had the Weimar collapsed, and hey, guess what? You had the dark valley of the 1930s that led to the most catastrophic war in mankind's history and 200 million people dying. So the road to perdition goes through fiat currency. Dr. Jeffrey Tucker, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Where do we go to get all this great content? The interview you did the other day, this great analysis you've done on the pandemic, and all your analysis about the purchasing power of the dollar, sir.
Yeah, I write daily for Epoch Times, and then I run a Brownstone Institute where I write a lot of things. And I'm running this show now at Brownstone where I interview these scientists who lived through the pandemic period with me and who really understand the issue. And I just decided we needed long-form interviews with these top minds to introduce them to the public so they don't just forever just talk to their friends and colleagues. So that's the purpose of the Brownstone show that I started a few months back. And it's going very well. And you can find that at brownstone.org. Thank you, Steve.
Doctor, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Physical goods. Remember the way Joe Kennedy kept his fortune? He was coming off the subway. His officers are down in the financial district on Wall Street. And he's sitting there and he's getting a shoe shine. Comes off subway, get a shoe shine. And the shoe shine guys are talking to each other, and they're talking about stocks. They're talking about what stocks they're buying and how they're buying stocks on margin. They're buying, all these stocks. And he's listening to this conversation. He goes to his office, tells everybody, we're dumping everything we got. Sell it all. Cash out. Because when the shoe shine guys are talking about all their stock market tips, it's time for us to bail. That's how he went to cash, kept his fortune, and then bought for pennies on the dollar after the crash happened. The Weimar Republic, maybe a lesson there for us. Dr. Peter Navarro, I want to deal with this piece. I'm kind of shocked, actually. Dr. Navarro joins White House. The New York Times, the biggest opponent of Trumponomics, and particularly in the area of tariff and the reindustrialization of the Americas. Remember, they led the fight to use the EPA to deindustrialize the United States. They actually have an amazing piece of yours, and they've done an incredible job with the graphics, the headline, all of it. First off, how did you do that? Who's your new agent? I thought I was your agent, but even I couldn't place that in the New York Times. How did you do it, sir?
Steve, I think what's so important here is that what I represent for the president, the Office of Trade and Manufacturing, support for blue-collar workers, not just with jobs at rising real wages. I mean, that is the Democrat tradition. And there's some DNA there. Of course, the woke DSA wing of the Democrat Party, plus the corporatists that pay for Chuck Schumer and Jeffries and all those guys, have forgotten about blue-collar workers, ergo Donald Trump's in office. But it was a pleasure working for them. I appreciate them putting it out. It's getting a wide thing. And since I know you guys didn't get the JPEG of the cover, this is what I'm doing here. It's called the Great Transshipment scam. Note the Trojan horse in a kind of wink and a nod to the Odyssey. But Steve, this is something I've been working on. The Great Transshipment scam refers to communist China having heavy tariffs on them, basically routing their products, their exports to America through other lower tariff countries. And it starts in 2018 when they wouldn't negotiate with me and Lighthizer and the boss. We throw the 301s on them. And since then, Biden comes in and China's figured out every which way to cheat us. And my job is to stop the cheating, stop the transshipment scam, shut down the shadow transshipment network. And here's what's really cool about this. Imagine artificial intelligence actually being used for something really good, which is working with Customs and Border on what I call the detective border, so that we are able in real time now to look at every ship and every container and every port around the world, assess transshipment risk, rank order targets, and they are targets, so that by the time they get here to America, we can slap them with the appropriate forms and recover the tariffs that they should have been paying. And that's what I'm in the middle of. I'm in the middle of busting this great transshipment scam. And Steve, it's worth tens upon tens of millions of additional revenue dollars for our Treasury, tens upon tens of thousands of jobs that would otherwise be displaced. And this is what we do at the White House. The news cycle pays attention to everything but jobs for the American people. And so this is a good deal for the American people, and it's got a lot of meat on the bone, brother.
Yeah, no. I thought
by the way,
the credential class.
Get the report at whitehouse.gov. Go ahead.
I'm going to get to that. The credential class of the New York Times, that's why I was shocked they did this. Explain this concept, because it is the CCP, obviously, but it's called tariff arbitrage. What is tariff arbitrage?
Yes.
And how do you guys cut it from all over the world to make sure that we're not being, that's these very smart people are not gaming the system to get around President Trump's tariff barriers, so the forcing function to drive manufacturing jobs back here to the United States? Dr. Navarro.
Okay, so the best way is to do this by example. Suppose China makes DC current motors for recliner chairs, right? When you sit in a recliner, it goes up and down because you push a button, right? There's millions of those made every year. China makes them with their subsidies and the cheating and all of that. So imagine a recliner that's quote made in Vietnam, right? And they actually have recliner factories there. They're real factories. They make all the upholstery and the springs and the this, that, and the other thing, right? But they don't make the motors. So they stick the motor in the recliner, and when it comes into the United States, it's paying the Vietnamese rate, which is substantially lower than the China rate, right? So if you got like $1 billion of recliners, right, it's like several $100 million that get evaded. So, and if they come to Mexico, it's even worse, because they can slip in underneath the USMCA rate and get zero tariff. So the arbitrage that you refer to from the other side of the river at Harvard basically is this huge profit incentive for tariff evasion in China, but also for the enabling countries, because they get to run all these tariff evasion facilities, right? So that's the game. And if you look at the beauty of the 2018 301 tariffs, you see from that point, it's the apex of the exports share China had of what they send to America, vis-a-vis the rest of the world. And it goes steadily down, right? So the tariffs are working.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you see the share of all these other countries go steadily up. It's almost like a one-to-one correspondence. And it's like India, it's like Mexico, it's all of the Southeast Asian, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and all that. And so the way the transshipment works, it's both obvious and subtle. The obvious one is when you take a container of an export that says made in China on it, you send it over to Vietnam, they strip off the made in China label, they throw a made in Vietnam label. Happens all the time. This more subtle form of it,
Dr. Navarro,
is what we call
Yep.
the screwdriver factory, which is where they send a bunch of parts over there and they screw them together. It's not
Yep.
what they call substantial transformation. It's just a screw job in a screwdriver factory.
Hang on one second. We'll take a short break. Dr. Navarro from the White House. Jim Rickards is going to join us. We're going to talk about global capital markets, the impact on your life. All next in the War Room.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Dr. Navarro, you've got pieces coming out everywhere. I think the Examiner later today, Washington Examiner, on the Chinese Communist Party stealing the 2020 election, coming from information put out by the task force. Bill Pulte. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, let me run the calendar. So today should be in the Examiner how China set up this massive operation to interfere with our elections. Okay, and that apparatus is very much still in place. Tomorrow we're going to look at the Maricopa hacker and how that guy got scot-free for a felony, but exposed how vulnerable Arizona election was and how that got suppressed. They did nothing to him. The FBI failed to prosecute, and they put us in prison for a misdemeanor. And then on Monday, the Washington Times is going to run a piece on this CISA portion of the whole thing, where we actually, inside our government, inside DHS, we stress tested our election system, found massive friggin' holes in it. And they buried that news before the election in 2020. Yep. So it's just, I'm lining it up. I'm following John Solomon's lead. It's all on the White House website. But my job is to actually, I'm the Solomon whisperer and the Trump whisperer on this.
Yeah, no.
I mean,
Steve, hold it.
This stuff blows your friggin' mind. The Round River.
No.
Are you kidding me? Round River.
Hold it. The coup against Trump, Round River protect Biden. I want to say this also, and I'm not criticizing. I'm just making an observation. There has never been more explosive information on a White House website in the entire history of the White House or in websites than there is now. And it's, besides War Room, Peter Navarro, and this is your side gig, it's explosive. These are not opinion pieces. This is not punditry. This is what nuclear, Solomon and the task force and Bill Pulte, nuclear. The great Bill Pulte over at DNI. It's nuclear. I kind of want to make sure the president. I hope the president's seeing it all,
because he's seeing every bit of it. And I'll tell you this: the reason you're not seeing it out there is because all the people who should be reporting it are indicted by it. There's a Round River piece I wrote yesterday that's going to come out, and it's like I got Morning Joe basically in the height of irony, talking about Hunter's laptop, saying, history's going to show that was Russian disinformation. You got Rachel Maddow doing the same thing. You got Jake Tapper doing the same thing. You got John Haircut Berman doing the same thing. You wonder why they don't want to talk about it, Steve? Because it makes MS Now and CNN look like friggin' Pravda or the CCP's
100%
mouthpiece. But it's mind-blowing, Steve. They tried to put Trump in prison for 700 years. That Round River thing, that was election interference. That swung the election. We know that. The polling says if people had known about Hunter Biden's laptop was real, that would have swung enough voters to swung that election.
And he's going on. Hang on.
They wouldn't have been able to steal it. Let me say that more accurately.
He's going on shows.
Been able to steal it.
He's going on shows and pushing that, it was Israeli disinformation, that the guy was never the thing. It's all bald-faced lies. It's all up on the White House
son of a bitch
website. Anyway.
Too much, Hunter, too much crack. He's like a crack baby at the age of 50-something, okay, Hunter? Read the friggin' Round River. They had somebody deep in the bowels of the FBI had your friggin' back, and that's a pimple-ass back that didn't deserve to be had. I'll tell you what, Round River alone should blow your mind, but it's everything, Steve. That's why I'm right. That's why I'm getting all of this stuff out as I can and coming to the War Room, and we'll do our best to punch through. But the American people going into that November election, they need to know all of this stuff, brother. Every bit of it.
Big time.
Because
Big
our
time.
elections are not secure.
And if we don't destroy,
they are not secure.
if we don't
Full
destroy,
stop.
yeah, if you don't destroy the deep state now, it's going to take back over as soon as Trump's gone. 100%.
They will destroy us.
Dr.
Make it
Navarro, where do
simple.
people go? Where do people go for your people? Where do people go for your content?
Look, PeterNavarro.com. That's the one-stop shop. That gets you to X. It gets you to Getter. It gets you to Truth Social. It gets you to Instagram. Sign up for the Substack. You got to get the Substack. Sign up for the Navarro Express podcast, if podcasts are what floats your boat. Watch the friggin' War Room. And I just thank these publications that are willing to rapidly get this information out. You know, the Washington Times is a rock, the Daily Caller, the Examiner.
Yep.
Just right on down the line. The Hill's been very good about getting stuff out as well.
Brother, thank you so much. We'll let you go back to work over at the White House, and I'll talk to you this afternoon, sir.
All right, my brother.
Natalie Winters is going to be. Natalie and I are going to take an entire hour at 5 o'clock and go through this. And particularly, she now is turning not just the CCP; she's turning her guns on the radical Islamist inside the wire here in this country. So, stand by. This afternoon's show is going to be pretty electric. Natalie Winters is going to join us for the entire hour, take her away from her investigative work, get her back up on the war room. Jim Rickards. One of the things I've been saying for a long time is we cannot if we want to avoid a kinetic global third world war, the one thing we can't have happen is to merge the Ukrainian, Eastern Russian-speaking border conflict with the Russians, merge that either in Odessa or the Black Sea, but merge that with this debacle in the Middle East. If this gets merged, and there are people out there trying to merge them, you're going to be in this thing for 20 years, right? With plenty of killing and the money burn. You're going to burn money. You're going to burn everything. This Ukraine situation is getting more and more dangerous every day. Is that your contention, sir?
That's absolutely right. And by the way, quick footnote on Peter Navarro. I agree with everything he said. I've got Hunter Biden on my list of running for president in 2028. We got time on that, but we'll come back. I wouldn't rule that out. But I'm serious. He's out there making the rounds. But let's talk about Ukraine and the connection with the Middle East. That is happening, but it's worse than that. So you had Ukraine attacked an Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea. I'm like, wait, that's not the Black Sea, it's the Caspian Sea. What's up with that? Well, they're saying, hey, we're fighting Russia. Iran's trading with Russia. So Iranian vessels in the Caspian Sea, that's fair game. Oh, wait a second. So Ukraine's firing long-distance missiles at the Caspian Sea, Central Asia. So that's going on. And it's getting worse than that. But here's we talk about the Middle East in particular, but here's the bigger problem. This is turning into a European war very quickly. It always has been, in the sense that it's never been about Ukraine. It's always been about Russia, destabilizing Russia, and Victoria Nuland and all these warmongers. They were wrong about regime change in Iran. They were equally wrong or more wrong about regime change in Russia. They said, let's just get the war going, and this will be unpopular. There'll be an uprising in Russia. They'll get rid of Putin. We'll get back to where we were in the 90s, where we can loot the place and all that stuff. It was always wrong. It never happened. But that's really what the war was about. West Germany, France, Britain, the U.S. above all, whether it's technology, drones, this idea that Ukraine can manufacture drones, it's not true. They assemble some things with Chinese parts and U.S. intelligence and German logistics. So that's how they do it. But here's where it's expanding and getting extremely dangerous. First of all, the Black Sea is closed. We talk about the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. Yeah, they're closed too. But now they've closed the Black Sea. Russia and Ukraine together, they're in a war, but those are two of the largest grain exporters in the world. No grain is getting out of the Black Sea right now. So you're looking at starvation. The Southern Hemisphere planting season is about to begin in a few weeks. There's no nitrates coming out of the Persian Gulf for fertilizer. Now there's no grain coming out of Russia and Ukraine. They're blowing up each other's ships. I've said all along that Putin's demands have not changed since before the war. And he repeated them in 2024, did an important speech to the June 2024 to the Russian foreign policy establishment. I said, the only thing that's changing is the longer Ukraine fights, the more territory they lose. Now Russia's going for Odessa. It was probably always on the list, but that was maybe a bridge too far for the Russians. But now they've isolated Odessa. They're going to control the entire Black Sea coast. But in the short run, the port of Odessa is closed. No grain is getting out. They're blowing up each other's vessels. Now, just to kind of raise the ante a little bit, the UK recently boarded and seized a huge Russian oil tanker near the English Channel. And the UK said, well, this is a ghost, ghost fleet, a flag, ghost fleet, etc. We know it's Russia behind it. We're taking it because we have sanctions on Russian oil exports. Okay. So Putin came out the other day, and I'm very impressed with how the Russians are very legalistic. Yeah, there's a war going on, but they dot the I's and cross the T's. And Putin said, this was what's called a flag of convenience. I happen to live on a very busy commercial port river. I get oil tankers going by my front window all the time. And you look at the stern, it's like it's Maduro, Marshall Islands, Cayman Islands, Bermuda. They don't say, U.S. or China or anything else. So Putin said, these are flags of convenience. It's not a ghost fleet, but we have an interest in these vessels. You want to do that? Two can play. And of course, Russia, they're great chess players. They're saying, we're going to get the Russian Pacific Fleet to start interdicting, maybe sinking your flag of convenience vessels in the Pacific Ocean. So this just, it is extremely dangerous, Steve, but the UK, above all, they're the biggest warmongers. They won't quit. They won't accept the outcome. By the way, expect the outcome will be Russia will have eastern Ukraine, Odessa, and the entire Black Sea coast. Poland is going to take a piece back. Wow. Hungary and probably Romania.
Hang on one second, Jim. Jim Rickards is with us from Strategic Intelligence. Short commercial break. Back in a moment.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
In the White House? Yeah. Hunter Biden 2028. You heard it first here, and you heard it from Jim Rickards, one of the smartest guys I know. Jim, real quickly, the Crimea situation. The Ukrainians, are they driving the? And you talk about ancient battlegrounds. I mean, come on, man. This is for thousands of years. This is why I want to avoid all this. The founders, the framers of the Constitution, the founders of our nation, the revolutionary generation said, no, do not go overseas for monsters to slay, because you know what? There's a lot of monsters, and they've been around a long time. Just stay out of it. They want to suck us back in Ukraine with hundreds of billions of dollars. They had this phony sanctions, Lindsey Graham in memoriam sanctions bill. Of course, they couldn't touch Save America, but they got this passed. That's why you're losing 6 seats in the Senate by the Fox polling, because you're a bunch of deadbeats focusing on deep state and neocon issues and not on the issues of the American people. And the people are giving you the middle finger right now. Senate, you deserve everything you get. You're going to lose the Senate because of this. This Crimea situation, is this because the Ukrainians, look, I'm anti giving them support, right? Because I think it's a squabble between two Slavic entities, but they got courage and grit, and I mean, they're giving as good as they get. What's happening in Crimea?
Yeah, I mean, you have to consider the geography of the Black Sea coast. I mean, I don't know when they stopped teaching geography, but I've always been a little bit obsessed with it. But from east to west, you have Rostov-on-Don, which is in Russia. Then you have Mariupol. Then you have Crimea and Sevastopol, which is a major port. And then a little further west, you have Odessa, which is the biggest port and the major port in Ukraine. Ukraine was always the breadbasket of Europe. It was always the breadbasket of Europe, and Russia has enormous grain capacity. All that grain comes out of one of those two or three places through the Bosporus with Turkish permission and it feeds the world. Let's not forget the original Crimean War, late 19th century. Who was in the Crimean War? UK and Russia. So here we are again with the UK being the biggest warmongers in the whole thing. So look, I'm not selling the Ukrainians short. They do have robust drone capacity, whether they make it themselves or not, who cares? They're firing them, and they're closing Sevastopol, or trying to. The Russians are absolutely closing Odessa, surrounding it. So you're looking at an expansion of the war and turning into a wider European war, and a grain shortage and global starvation. That's what's on the table while everyone is focused on the Persian Gulf.
Talk to me about strategic intelligence. It's just not for people that are involved in capital markets. Look, it's read by CEOs and chairmen, the C-suites all over the world. For $17.76, you're giving everybody a shot to take a look at this. I tell people, hey, if you have interest in world affairs, but most importantly, if you have interest in your own country, read strategic intelligence because you base it upon predictive analytics. Give me a minute on that and why everybody should take up on this offer because it's basically free. If you don't love it, you go back to Jim and say, hey, I need my $17 back. Throw in the 76 cents too. So, Jim, why should people get this?
Thanks, Steve. This is Strategic Intelligence is the newsletter. Our landing page is rickardsintel.com, rickardsintel.com. This is our lowest price ever, patriotic $17.76, so $17.76 for 3 months. If you don't like it, by the way, the vast majority of readers continue indefinitely, but if you don't like it, we'll give you the $17.76 back. Quick footnote, Steve, the landing page is the same, rickardsintel.com, but we have a new video up that was endorsed by President Trump. And what do I mean by that? Trump took the video that you get today, if you go to rickardsintel.com, Trump took that video and put it on True Social. And I got a call on that. I was like, hey, what's going on? I called my marketing team. I said, did you guys buy advertising on True Social? They said, absolutely not. Trump did this on his own. It's called the Midterm Meltdown. We're going to look at the indictments, the frauds, the steal, all the things that are going to be headline news between now and Election Day. So same 1776 price, rickardsintel.com, new content, Midterm Meltdown, but endorsed by President Trump because he put it on True Social on his own.
Jim Rickards, thank you. I'm going to bug you after the show today to come back on, hopefully tomorrow, Saturday. So much going on in the world. You get such a great big picture of it. Got to talk about the Asian bond markets. Sir, Jim Rickards, thank you, brother.
Thanks.
Predictive analytics, strategic intelligence. Give it a turn, $17.76. George Papadopoulos, of course, you're named of all the deep state coming after everybody. Of course, they're guilty. Your name keeps getting thrown. But first, because you're one of the best geopolitical thinkers I know, give me your assessment of this Ukraine. Because I keep saying, hey, folks, if we let the kinetic war that we keep funding on the Ukrainian side, if we let the kinetic war on the Eastern-speaking, Russian-speaking eastern border of Ukraine merge with what's happening in Persia, you're going to have a conflict that's going to be 20 years. We're going to be sending men, women to die, and you're also going to be sending money over there to support it. Your assessment of where this Ukrainian war is right now, sir.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Steve. Well, look, here's the simple fact. The United States has mutual defense treaties with 52 countries on 5 continents, and one of those 52 countries is not Ukraine. Ukraine today is one of the most corrupt countries on the European continent, and it is attempting to basically morph its own conflict with the conflict that the United States is currently in the Persian Gulf. And that's really why Ukraine has conducted various drone strikes against not only Russian maritime shipping bases and oil refineries, but also Iranian vessels in the Caspian Sea that were traversing going to Russia. This has the potential now to result in a tit for tat in which Iran has been threatening to hit Ukraine and to suck in potentially the Europeans, NATO, and the United States to defend Ukraine, not only from Russia, but Iran. And this is ultimately what Zelensky's goal has been since day one. Continue the gravy train, eventually bring American boots on the ground, European boots on the ground, and build a collective defense treaty with a corrupt country that's not even in the European Union. This is a strategic mistake and a blunder that the Trump administration is not seriously considering. But should the Democrats win the midterms and, God forbid, win the presidency in 2028, that will all be back on the table, and it'll be completely against the interests of the U.S. taxpayer and their security.
Look, when I came off sea duty, from the Persian Gulf and the North Arabian Sea and all that, and the Pacific Fleet back in when President Reagan showed up, so I was there, 77 to 80, 81, came back. Once I got in the Pentagon, the whole focus I was in the Pacific, and I said, well, this is where our focus is, right? In the Persian Gulf. I get back, no, Bannon, that's not true. everything was focused on Russia and the Russian army coming across the North German plain through Poland, through Prussia, sweeping down like World War I, World War II. And I'm sitting there, I was just a grundoon. I was a junior officer. I said, man, does this really make sense? Is this what the whole thing's about? And the focus was maniacal. Would you say today that given what the Russians have had to do in Ukraine, and this fighting in Ukraine is going on for now, I think 5 or 6 years, it's probably, the Russian army's probably not a threat to roll through Prussia, Poland, the North German plain, and down into France like World War I and World War II? Would you say, George, that's probably should not be a priority for us, although we still make it seem like it's the whole center of gravity of our national security is actually around that, sir?
You know, Steve, U.S. strategic planning had assumed that the United States military can conduct 2 different operations on 2 different continents. And that's really what the assumption was behind Iraq and Afghanistan. You could argue it was all part of the same region. But what we're discussing here today and what countries like Ukraine and others are attempting to suck the United States into is a kinetic war, not only against Iran, but potentially Russia and even China over the South China Sea and Taiwan simultaneously, all the while these 3 countries are attempting to basically de-dollarize the world, to usurp the US leadership model, the capitalist system, and replace it with a BRICS-led model and a new architecture that basically will determine the future of trade, finance, and how oil and natural gas is even traded. So I would argue that a main impetus behind this driving force that I just described was the failed sanctions policy that the Biden administration imposed on Russia after the war started. This should have never been part of the United States' responsibility, as we had to take care of our own home front. But what did other countries look at the sanctions regime and say? If the United States and Europe could freeze assets and central bank reserves of Russia, they can do it to us. And that's really what this new drive towards de-dollarizing the global economy and trying to reformulate global trade and finance away from the US-led model has really all been about. That is ultimately why we have to negotiate an end to this war. We have to stop financing Ukraine, and we have to come to a new detente with the great powers in the world to prevent this very damaging result from occurring. And that includes Russia, ending the war with Iran, and coming to some sort of agreement with China. Once we do that, Steve, and as long as the United States controls the Western Hemisphere the way that the Trump administration is doing, to ensure that we have no foreign threats in this part of the world, we should be okay. But as of right now, that has yet to be seen.
You know, and to George's part, this is one of the reasons I have a problem with the NDAA and the spending of the 1.5 trillion. If it tied back to the hemispheric defense, because the policy going forward, George is absolutely correct. It's hemispheric defense, and that hemispheric defense is Central Pacific in the 3-island chain, because as our great, next generation of great leaders in the late 19th century, America's a Pacific power. If you don't tie those together, then you're just going to be burning cash and men and troops and ships everywhere in the world. It's time for that madness to stop. George, President Trump, when he first started coming on the scene in 14, 15, and really 16, was going to be a disruptor of the mindset of the imperial capital in Washington about all this. And that's one of the reasons they tried to take him out. And that's one of the reasons you were one of the early targets. We got a minute or 2 on this side. I'm going to hold you through the break. Just your assessment of the revelations you've seen about the coup in May of 2017, of Round River, of everything you've seen since your name pops up a lot about the deep state's attempt to take down and destroy President Trump.
Yeah, nothing shocks me anymore, Steve. And the moment the shock factor completely left me regarding this topic was last summer, when then DNI Tulsi Gabbard called what Obama and his administration and top-level Democrats did to the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, and people like you and me and others, a treasonous conspiracy. Now, unfortunately, it's been over a year since DNI Gabbard said that, and we haven't really had concrete results, including indictments, raids, and potential convictions of those perpetrators who were part of this treasonous conspiracy, to use ex-DNI Gabbard's own words. So I wasn't shocked at all to learn that that same group of people that really evolved from the Obama administration, including the Rosensteins, the Rays, the Comeys, launched a criminal investigation against the sitting president, who was their boss at the time. And Steve, I'm gonna close on this. Why did they do this? Because they needed to cover up what Comey and Obama did and to overthrow Trump so that the United States, its citizens, and the world would never have the true story. That's why we need to get these files out. That's why transparency is paramount, and why accountability will assure what Obama and Biden did in the past will never be repeated again.
George, hang on 1 second. I'm holding through the break. Birchgold.com/Bannon, End of the Dollar Empire. If you want to understand what George just talked about what the BRICS nations are doing, remember, a lot of those are enemies. Some are not our enemies. They're saying, yo, what's happening here with your spending is destroying the U.S. dollar. You understand it all. Birchgold.com/Bannon, the End of the Dollar Empire. 8 free installments, all online. Check it out today.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Make sure you have the background as you understand what George is talking about. It's very, very important for not just your country's sake, but also you personally. Birch Gold, Bannon, Bannon, 989898. Text it now. Get all the information totally free, no obligation. Investing in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump. It's inextricably linked with the Lakers selling for $12 billion and Queen's music catalog. Not a Queen fan. Going for over $1 billion. Hard assets. Check it out today. Also, October 15th is upon us. The extension 866-513-5516. That's 866-513-5516. Tax Network USA. The extension's coming up. Get prepared. If you've asked for an extension, then the IRS has a file. If you call them today, they can draw the file and talk to you about what your exposure is. $49. Check that out. Go to Tax Network USA. They're offering these very, huge specials to make sure that you are on top of everything with the IRS and don't get wrapped around the axle. 866-513-5516. This is about the October 15th extension, $49. They can pull your file and give you a total assessment of where you stand. George Papadopoulos, man, you've got such a great grip on geopolitics. It's and very articulate. It's total clarity. It's amazing. Question I've got, and I'm kind of pressed for time here, but in May of 2017, what's been revealed on the White House website from hard facts, and those facts have not really been disputed, did members of then President Trump's first term of his government and the permanent bureaucracy or the administrative or deep state attempt a coup d'etat against President Trump as sitting commander-in-chief, sir?
The answer is 100% yes. And what that attempt was an overt act in a criminal conspiracy to not only disenfranchise millions of American voters who voted for President Trump and America First, but a treasonous act to overthrow the United States government. And that's ultimately what they attempted in May 2017 after they failed to keep him from ascending to the Oval Office in November of 2016, Steve. So that is ultimately what the president was up against. His own so-called people were treasonous from within. And if you go back as far back as ancient Rome, that's what the great orator Cicero warned would eventually destroy the ancient city of Rome. It was treason from within, not an enemy abroad, but from within. And that's what the president was up against. He fought back against it, but the time is now to expose exactly what they did and to hold them accountable, Steve. Because if we don't, now that we have the executive and we control Congress, we'll never have this shot again. The time is now.
Give me 1 minute. What do you recommend? Is it criminal proceedings? What is Papadopoulos' recommendation needs to be done now, sir?
We need to stop playing games. We need to declassify everything. The president has been calling for declassification. Ultimately, the buck stops with the president. The president has to declassify every single file regarding Obamagate, the impeachment scandals, January 6th, deliver those files for the first time ever to a grand jury so that they could see this once classified information and allow the grand jury, along with the prosecutors leading these investigations, patriotic individuals like Joe DiGenova and his team, to bring it there and to prosecute these people for the first time ever. Because if you look back at what happened with Durham, with Special Counsel Durham, he never had these files declassified. These files couldn't get to grand jury. That's why he wasn't able to go all the way. We can go all the way now, Steve, but we need to have the will to do it. And I know the president does, but it's up to his team too not to block it. And that's what George Papadopoulos would advise right now.
This is why Bill Pulte was, I'm telling you, Bill Pulte, if it was not for Solomon and the task force, amazing. If it was not for Bill Pulte, we would have lost this country. And I don't say that lightly. What has happened at when he was there at DNI for 6 freaking weeks with the task force, we've now got exposure. And hey, I'm just asking new DNI, yo, dude, where the frick are the declassifications? I don't want to hear any happy talk about how you're working well with others. I don't care about working well with others. You need Jay, you need to step up. Try to be half the person that Bill Pulte was. Papadopoulos, where do people go to get your content? We're going to be back on. Where to go?
Appreciate it, Steve. You could follow me on X at George Papa 19.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
McCabe, you're at the White House. We're pressed for time. This situation with the Lincoln extended deployment, one of the carriers of the Sentinel of our carrier battle group. Explain what's out there and what you know as far as fact goes, sir.
Yeah, real quick, Steve. So USS Lincoln, along with USS Spruance, Peterson, and the Michael Murphy, those are the 3 destroyers. They deployed November 21st. They've been underway or deployed for more than 260 days. It is now on station in the Iranian theater. And what's happening is, what's bubbling up is crew discontent about food and morale. There are 2 examples of people trying to jump overboard, which were reported in the Navy Times. And then now you're hearing that the food is a problem. Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain, and all of the sort of back office, all the logistics, everything for Fifth Fleet goes through Bahrain. But Bahrain is compromised as a port because it's literally a kinetic zone there. And so that's what's holding things up. There's plenty of food.
Hang on. We have to have had something else. Bahrain's the island right in the Persian Gulf with the drones and the missiles. Please tell me there's got to be some backup, out around the rim of the Arabian Sea. Is it not, sir?
Apparently not. And so, all the storekeepers are in Bahrain. And so that's the problem, getting things back and forth.
That's not going to work.
But also there's the jumpers, and it's becoming political.
Yeah. Fine. Yeah, Democrats all over this. Okay, McCabe, I'm going to call you after the show. We're going to get on top of this. There's a logic there I don't quite understand, so we're going to have to understand it. Neil McCabe at the White House. Natalie's going to join me for the entire hour this afternoon. You don't want to miss it. Charlie Kirk, show us up. Also, American Health Services, Insurance, American Health Share, freedomforhealth.org/Bannon. Go do your due diligence and talk to senior management. If your health insurance, or as Dr. Jeffrey Tucker called it, medical insurance, is too high, if you got to avoid rent or to pay it, you got to avoid putting food on the table, America Health Share. Go to Freedom for Health. Was it Freedom? Hang on. freedomforhealth.org. Do it today.